The political upheaval in the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro is set to continue 8 months after the ANC formed a coalition government to the Metro. Opposition parties have come together and are set to sign a coalition agreement with the aim of removing the ANC from power. The ACDP, the African Independent Congress, Abantu Integrity Movement, the Democratic Alliance, Freedom Front Plus, PAC and UDM have agreed to form a coalition government. We now cross live to our colleague Lerato Fekisi for more on this story. A very good morning to you, Lerato. Take us through what the signing of this coalition agreement means for the Metro.
Very good morning to you, Deja. Well, what this coalition agreement means is that the smaller parties that you mentioned in your intro are now going to form what they call is a new coalition government, the Metro, which is going to be led by the DA. And I think you spoke about this in your intro, Deja, when you said that this is the second coalition government in just 8 months. Now, this couldn't have come at a worse time for the Metro, Deja, when the Metro, as you know, is facing a really hectic and very challenging water crisis. So instability within the political realms adds to the problems of the Metro. But I'm joined this morning by Dr. Ntsikelelo Breakfast, a political analyst in the Metro, to break down for us what this coalition government is going to mean for the Metro, and also talk about the fact that our coalition government is even working, because this is about the third or the fourth coalition government in just 5 years within this Metro. Mr. Breakfast, a new coalition government agreement going to be signed this afternoon by coalition partners, the second coalition government within 2 months, perhaps trouble for the Metro looming as opposed to a unity that they're now speaking of.
Yeah, I think so long as we don't have an independent body to enforce this arrangement, it will fall apart. Simply because, political parties, they tend to rush into joining forces without developing a specific mechanism to deal with their own contradictions. So I get the sense that there's a missing link between power sharing and some provisions of conflict management. So you can see that political parties are gravitating towards power, positions, and so on, at the expense of development.
We are aware that these political parties have been speaking for the past 4 months, and I think key to their conversations is who's going to get what. How critical is that going to be, especially for the DA, who hold the highest number of seats in this coalition government, to say, we've got the number of seats, but in our talks, who gets what, so that this coalition government does actually work?
It's all talk but no action, because they see power sharing as a win-lose situation as opposed to a win-win situation. I think what is needed is that they need to come together and make sure that they work side by side so that they can promote development for the majority of the Metro. We currently have a challenge of day zero, so that might impact on business confidence here. So we really need stability here.
Mr. Breakfast, but can parties really come together? Because now we're speaking about a ±7 parties coming together to form one government. Does it really work? Because the ANC came into power 8 months ago with the same or similar coalition partners, and they were all screaming that they're going to work together, it's going to work really well, they're united and nothing will topple them. Now 8 months later we find ourselves speaking the opposite, because they couldn't come to some agreement, because everyone comes in with their own plans, their own vision, and perhaps, like you were saying earlier on, their own need for power.
Yeah, in other places there is some kind of stability, even though it's still early days. So I think what is happening in other places can also happen here. But I think the biggest challenge is that, in my opinion, South Africa doesn't have a good history of coalition formations. So this is a recent phenomenon. I mean, during apartheid, the National Party dominated the political landscape. So since 1994, the ANC has been in power until the early 2000s, until it lost some grip at local government level, and then things became worse in 2016, and then again got worse again last year. So this is a new phenomenon. So we have not developed like a formal structure that will enforce these agreements. No wonder we have these challenges.
The last, Mr. Breakfast, obviously the people that are in power are not just there to serve themselves, they're here to serve the residents. And like you were speaking earlier on, we've got a day zero that's looming for the Metro. And in terms of service delivery, what have you observed on the ground that people perhaps are complaining about, that these political parties should start taking seriously in terms of trying to form a government, not only because we want someone to lead the Metro, but because we want to ensure that services go to the people, because that's the reason why they've been placed in the offices?
Well, you know as well as I do that we have not seen services being rendered to the inhabitants of this place. People are after power, after position, after accessing resources at local government level.
Well, that was Dr. Lerato Fekisi, who's a political analyst here in Nelson Mandela Bay Metro, just speaking about the newly formed coalition, Desiree, and just saying that in his opinion that he doesn't see even this new one really coming to the fore or being able to actually assist the Metro, because he says when political parties come into power, what's more important for them is who's going to get which seat, because they want to benefit themselves, and opposed to making sure they bring service to the people. What's more important for these coalition governments is to make sure they feed their own pockets. So he was saying in his opinion he doesn't see any change that's going to come from this agreement that's going to be signed later on this afternoon. Back to you, Desiree.
Lerato, when are we perhaps expected to know the outcomes of the signing of the coalition? You're saying the result is coming out this afternoon, but is that still the set time?
That's just going to be one leg of it, Desiree. So they're going to meet this afternoon and sign the coalition agreement, and then after that, obviously, would have to put in a proposal to sit a council meeting, which is then obviously when they'll have to actually table the coalition government, and then only then it will come into power. So it's just an agreement for now. These parties saying that we are forming our defense team, we are forming our team as the smaller parties, but in terms of it actually coming into governments, actually coming to fruition, would actually have to wait for the council meeting to sit, and no date has been set for that as yet.
And also, we're saying that there's conversations, the negotiations between the parties have been going on for about 4 months. And the latest development is the ANC-led government in the province making progress, showing momentum just in terms of water provision in the province. Has that had any impact on the mood in the province?
Not at all, Desiree. I think it perhaps came at a late time. I think for a long time the Metro has had water issues. I think it's just this year that the water issues have really become so big. But it's been a long time that the people in the Metro have had water problems. So many of them are saying that, you know what, the ANC government has come a little bit too late, because if you remember, Desiree, when the Minister of Water and Sanitation, Senzo Mchunu, arrived here, he found over 3,000 leaks, and those were just the reported ones. And he was saying that he wanted those leaks closed. And today, and up until now, Desiree, they've actually found over 5,000 leaks, which shows to the magnitude of the problem in terms of water in the Metro. Also, Desiree, to understand that for the issue of the Metro, for the Metro's water issues to be able to be fixed, we had to have people like the Gift of the Givers coming in to also assist. So people have been saying that had these NGOs not come in, had the private sector not come in or stepped in to assist the Department of Water and Sanitation or to assist the ANC, perhaps wouldn't be seeing the recovery or the development that we're seeing in terms of fixing water here. So people here are saying that they appreciate the ANC coming forward to assist, but perhaps a little bit too late.
Lerato, thank you so much for setting the scene for us. Of course, that event happening in the afternoon, opposition parties in the Nelson Mandela Bay coming together to try and form a government.